I decided I had to do a little preface before I actually start the sermon that I wrote for this. And that is, in philosophy, the subject of how do you know what you know is epistemology. How do you know what you know? And in theology, it's called authority. What is your authority? Is it the Bible? Is it other scripture? Is it the tradition of your, the teachings of your tradition? As in Catholicism, that would be their chief authority, is the teachings of the tradition. As in Buddhism, it would be the teachings of the tradition. Is it intuition? For Emerson, it was often intuition. Is it experience? Is it science? Or is it many, many, many things? Philosophy, science, experience, intuition. As Unitarian Universalists, generally we draw on many traditions, including scripture, but also our own sense of experience and learning, as well as science. Today's sermon, the authority starts with science. And I've been thinking about this topic for a number of years, but only just began to write it down. So, with that preface. We say the sun sets in the west every day and the sun rises in the east, but you know that is not true. It is the earth that revolves around the sun, so if we were to be accurate in our language, we would say something like, in the morning, our side of the earth turns toward the sun, and in the evening, our side of the earth turns away from the sun, or for short, we might say, sun side and dark side, or some such. And some do say earth rise and earth set. But you know, you don't hear that very much.
No.
Our language helps us hold on to concepts that are not true. Let me repeat that. Our language helps us to hold on to concepts that are not true. And we know they're not true, but we don't think about it. The way we image things, the stories we tell about our lives, affect our understanding of reality. Likewise, we say matter and spirit, as if there were a separation between them. But scientists have clearly proven that everything is both particle and energy in an endless dance. It's all dancing. We know furthermore that when we can observe this subatomic structure of things, our very observation causes change. This has been proven over and over. At the lowest level, matter doesn't stand still when observed. It moves. It is in a relationship to the observer. Galen Gingrich is a UU minister at All Souls in New York City, and he, in his book, I hope I wrote, somewhere I have it. God Revised, and it's a look at God based on science. And he describes this subatomic particle thing in a few succinct sentences. If you could disassemble the material universe into its constituent elementary particles, there are currently 12, 6 quarks and 6 leptons, and you pack them tight together, you'd have a mere handful of material. Granted, it would be quite a handful. Everything else is relationships, the experience over time of these particles as they relate to each other. End of quote. Well, that is the structure of our world. Particles of matter in relationship. So we really are all in this together. The founding principle of existence is relationship. We are interconnected beings, body and soul, flesh and spirit. We are in relationship with trees and flowers and insects. The poets knew this. The poets knew this. Why do we not fully, thoroughly get it inside us? We are in relationship with bananas and cattle and water, with mountains and air and airplanes. And as humans, we are the sum of our experiences and our relationships. Our ancestors, our native cultures, our grandparents and our families helped us to make us who we are. our associates, the people we went to school with, the ones we played with as children, that we went to camp with, and our teachers, our work associates, and even the people we don't like very much. They're all a part of us. We are interconnected beings. The Transcendentalists, Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, didn't know quantum physics. And heck, we probably didn't know about 6 quarks and 6 leptons. We sure didn't learn that in school. But the Transcendentalists grasped this very fundamental truth of life, that the self exists in a system where everyone is who they are by virtue of their relationships to everyone and everything else. They got this. They didn't come up with this idea in a vacuum, however. They weren't the earliest to understand the relativity of everything. It is a central concept in the very ancient ideas of Hinduism. Hindus believe that all living creatures have a soul. This soul, the spirit or true self of every person, is called the Atman. The soul is believed to be eternal. According to some schools of Hinduism, this Atman is part of the Brahman, the Supreme Spirit, and the goal of life is to realize that one's soul is identical to the Supreme Soul, that the Supreme Soul is present in everything and everyone, and all life is interconnected, and there's oneness in all life. Namaste. The God in me greets the God in you. It may be the best sign in the whole world, and the truest. It's like holograms. A little piece of the whole replicates the whole in a hologram. The Greek philosopher Plotinus, 3rd century of the Common Era, had understood that all souls are interconnected with the Source, the One, the unity of all. He wrote about this in something called the Aeneads. And I'll have just a little quote because it's kind of archaic language. There is one identical soul, every separate manifestation being that soul complete. That's like the hologram. The differentiated souls issue from the unity and strike out here and there, but are united at the source, much as light is a divided thing on earth, shining in this house and that, and yet remains one. One soul is the source of all souls. It is at once divided and undivided. So yes, Plotinus was describing something like a hologram. You can isolate a part of the 3D and the part will manifest the whole picture. Some ideas are grasped by some people without scientific proof. They just know it. Well, Emerson seems to have been one of those intuitive graspers of reality. You can hear the echo of Plotinus and the Hindus in the Emerson reading from his essay, The Oversoul, that was our responsive reading this morning. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds, and within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. You almost can hear the word Om. Archaic language, but there it is. All energy, spirit, non-matter is interconnected. We are part and parcel of everything. Now we understand that physics tells us the same thing. Everything is relational. What we do affects the whole. I used to love a song by Carole King, and in fact it inspired the title of today's Ponderings and Musings. We are all in this together, and maybe we'll see that one day when we conquer our fear together, when we finally find a way. And we all need forgiving for all the damage done, for the things we do not thinking, for the hurt that we've caused someone. But me, I keep on living, caught somewhere there between the reason and the meaning, the vision and the dream. Oh, we we are all in this together. I know that seems easy to say, but I don't use the word forever. It's enough just to say, someday, maybe we'll all get it. But I believe, that we haven't incorporated this understanding fully any more than we think earthrise instead of sunrise, or earthset instead of sunset. I know better, but I still see the sun sinking in the west. In our daily lives, I dare say we don't image our interconnection at a fundamental level. We just don't. Many Buddhists do, though. They do. But we in the West, schooled in reason and individuality, don't think primarily of our interconnectedness. We are aware of our separateness. We were taught as children to be aware of our separateness. I've been in a study group at our Brevard Unitarian Universalist Church for the past 4 years. We call ourselves Christians in Exile, after a phrase by that radically progressive Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong. He referred to progressive Christians like himself as Christians in exile, because they don't exactly fit in most of the mainline churches. A retired Methodist minister, you might have met him, for I think he has spoken here, Earl Rabb, now a good Unitarian Universalist, and I have been co-leading this group. We started out studying UUs in relationship to progressive Christianity. And the reason we actually started the class was because we had so many newcomers in our church who'd spent all their lives being Methodists or Catholics or Presbyterians, and they sure weren't used to being something called Unitarian Universalists, and they didn't know quite what to do about their belief in Jesus in this congregation. So we started out studying UUs in relation to progressive Christianity. Then we studied more about Jesus from a progressive viewpoint, and then we moved on to read a number of New Testament interpretations. Most recently, in the last year, we've read the UU Minister of All Souls, New York, Galen Gingrich book, see, I knew it was in here somewhere, God Revised, on implications of modern science on contemporary religious thought. He writes of interrelations. Our next book, we did this in the spring, into the summer, was Karen Armstrong's 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, which led us to want to learn more how to become more compassionate people. So now we are in the midst of a study by Thupten Jinpa, Jinpa, a former Tibetan Buddhist monk and now professor in Montreal, who is the chief translator for the Dalai Lama. His book, A Fearless Heart, came out this year, and it's about becoming compassionate. Jinpa argues that we are born to connect, that life is relational. That is the Buddhist view, not based on physics, but on worldview and tradition. Jinpa says that historically in the West, at least since the Enlightenment, and especially since Darwin's theory of evolution, the dominant view of who we are as a species portrays us, our basic nature, as selfish, with competition, our fundamental drive. And building on this assumption of our selfish nature, scientists and philosophers have subsequently gone to great lengths to reduce the motive behind every human interest to self-interest. And so in popular Western culture, kind-hearted, selfless behavior is often seen as naive or unrealistic or irrational, and at worst, compassionate people are seen as hypocrites and just deceiving themselves. I've been accused of all these by my critics of ministry or socio-political views. They'll say, you're just an idealist. You don't see reality, my critics would say. But Jinpa says, I've always found this perspective to be uncharitable toward ourselves, to say the least. In my formative years as a young monk, I learned the classical Buddhist view, which understands compassion and other positive qualities to be innate, its expression through kindness completely natural. It's a matter of cultivating our better parts while curbing our more destructive tendencies, such as anger, aggression, jealousy, and greed. And I would add the use of guns. He also says the Buddhist view of empathy and compassion arises from a felt sense of connection or identification with others. In fact, it is more than a felt connection. It is a sense of regard for the other, valuing the other, and in fact, honoring the other. We don't do that so much in the West when we greet people. But in the East, in Buddhism, they do. In his research, Jempa found more and more scientists who find that the selfish view of human nature is simplistic and actually wrong. More and more studies are finding that compassion is present even in very young children. And social scientists are finding that if our natural capacity for compassion is akin to our capacity for language, you know, the 1-year-old, the 2-year-old, then in a person who doesn't encounter compassion or language in her formative years, this capacity may unfortunately remain undeveloped and unexpressed. So think about it. Think about the raising of very young children in a culture of selfishness or a culture of interconnectedness. And as I was thinking about that, I remembered many years ago, in the late 70s, I was studying to be a religious educator as well as a minister. And one of the books I read was called Two Worlds of Childhood, USA and USSR, by Uri Bronfenbrenner. What I remember is the contrasting cultural expectations. In the USSR, children are expected to share toys. In the USA, in our preschools, in our homes, they are taught, take your turn, it is Johnny's turn now. And that's what I remember of the book, but I did go back to it, and Bronfenbrenner's main thesis was that more and more American children are being effectively raised not by their parents, but by television with its aggressive shows, and by learning from their peers. What it has produced, said Bronfenbrenner, is alienation, indifference, antagonism, violence, and juvenile delinquency, or extreme individuals, isolated beings rather than interrelated ones. So we can see what a difference worldview and early training makes in the way we view our reality as humans in relation to each other. I will say, though, that my observation of parents of the last generation is that they're doing close nurturing parenting. The pendulum has swung towards child-centered parenting. Many of today's children are growing up with genuine warmth, empathy, and respect for themselves as persons, and not so much being raised by television or by their friends. They're spending more parent time. Their parents are firmly and warmly and empathetically hands-on parents in close relationship with their children. Now, that's not all children, but the ones that I've been watching. Empathy is feeling for or with other people and understanding their feelings. When we witness another person's suffering in particular, compassion arises from empathy, adding the dimensions of wishing to see the relief of suffering and wanting to do something about it. Acts of kindness are the action we take when we see someone suffering. Jimpa asks, why is it that the kindness of others, especially when received at a very critical point in our lives, think about a time when you were really, really hurting and someone did something exceptionally kind. Why is it that the kindness of others at these critical moments have the power to leave such a deep imprint in our minds? The simple answer is that such an act touches us at the very deepest level of our humanity, where we are the most human, with a powerfully felt need for kindness and connection. So what he's doing is reminding us that we all have this in us. In other words, Empathy and kindness for one another is a more accurate reflection of reality than radical individuality. Our primal nature is not isolation through the pull and power of although the pull and power of tribalism is still immensely strong in this world and is a counterforce to more global interconnectedness. We are structured by the nature of reality to be in relationship. This has major ramifications for ethical behavior in matters like immigration and health care and fair wages and any matter of hot-button issues in the world today. I want to just say a word about the delight I'm taking in Pope Francis, for he gets this. I think he really gets this interrelatedness of all of us. With one historical and traditional exception, he gets that all people are interrelated on this planet and that our survival is mutual. What he doesn't get yet is that half the population of the world, women, need the same rights, power, and authority that men do. I mean, he just doesn't get it. It means also that Carl Jung was probably right in positing a collective unconscious, truly the tie that binds us in common memory. And this radical interrelatedness means that prayer or conscious intentional thoughts actually have efficacy. Not every prayer, but many prayers. Prayers that move you from the heart. We move energy with our deep thoughts and meditations and prayers, and enough energy can affect things at the cellular level. On a personal note, I want to say that I am far from thinking, in my everyday thinking, in terms of we are all in this together. I forget. It is a daily struggle and a daily intention to wrap my brain around this reality. But I believe that as more of us begin to review reality as it actually is, we may begin to change the world. The power lies in knowing that we are not isolated beings, but connected in every way to one another and all things. Our key words then must be compassion, empathy, and respect. It is easy to remember, for me anyway, by saying Namaste. I honor the God in you, or the soul in you, as I honor the soul or God in me.